Hello there. Welcome to today's episode of the Training Tangents podcast with myself, Ben, and my beautiful co-host, Tom. Now, in today's episode, we are going to be giving you a little bit of a more quick fire. Would that be how we would say this? Is a little bit of a shorter
Condensed.
episode. Condensed. There we go. Condensed. This is more of a condensed episode because we want to make sure that we are giving you information that is as viable and as applicable to you so you can listen to the podcast and then go away and immediately take action on it. So in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about 5 habits that will help you stay on track. So Tom, firstly, how have you been? Before we get into that, how have you been?
I'm just coming out the other end of being not very well. But I think this podcast is going to come out. We're going to record another one after this, which is going to come out before, which might confuse people slightly. I feel a little bit confused right now, if I'm honest, trying to explain that.
The mysteries of production.
Yeah, how does it work? My mind is just not following. But yeah, basically, I'm just on the back end of I had tonsillitis, had some antibiotics, felt a little bit better, and then got another fever, had sinusitis, had another load of antibiotics, which I finished just over 2 weeks ago, and I'm still just the back end of a bit snotty, and my throat is a bit sore. So the last couple of weeks haven't been particularly fun, and I haven't done any training apart from I started to do a little bit of just light stuff yesterday, and so far so good. Nothing has I've not sort of had anything kind of flare up or inflammation or sort of an immune response from that, which I'm taking as a good thing. But I think it might coincide with the fact that we have had one day where we had a little bit of sunshine, which has been absolutely unbelievable because I very much miss the sun. I don't know about you.
Oh my word. I can't even explain how much I've missed it. I'm literally looking out at beautiful blue skies. In fact, before we started recording, I showed you how nice it was because I even was talking to one of my friends in Florida and I literally got them to just point the camera at the sun because I was like, oh, come back to us. Where have you been? We've missed you all so much. But it's so true. It's amazing how much, even when Janice and I were out walking the other day, we were just saying how much better the sun makes you feel.
Yeah.
Everything just is so much easier, and getting up in the morning, doing the stuff you're supposed to do throughout the day when the sun is present is just so much easier. And it's now becoming more and more present, and it's making me feel so much better, just like you. But I'm glad you're out of the tunnel. I was also in a sick tunnel as well for the last 2 weeks. It's the most sick I've felt in a long time, and I took 2 weeks off entirely. I listened to my body, and instead of doing that thing that we all are guilty of doing, which is trying to rush back, I just accepted that this was part of the process. And I think that's just at the top. This is not one of the tips, but I'd say that understanding that taking time off and recovering is such an important aspect of this whole process, and being able to give yourself permission to take that time off is so critical. So I'm feeling a million times better. I did a full body workout yesterday, just tickled a little bit of everything. And this morning I woke up and I was like, oh, I can feel I've done something, but I'm not aching, that the way you do push it, that little bit too far. I'm very aware that when I move my body, I'm like, oh, okay, things are feeling a little bit tender. So I'm going to be doing 3 full body sessions. So today's a day off. Tomorrow I'll hit full body again, next day off. And then I'll hit full body again on Friday. And that's basically the structure I'm going to follow until I can start ramping up the intensity. And that's basically what I'm going to do to get myself back into the swing of things. Speaking of getting back into the swing of things, here are 5 habits that will help you stay on track, or maybe get back on track if you've been sick, like myself and Tom. So the first one, do you want to kick it off, or shall I go with the first one here?
Oh, you carry on, mate.
So just like I mentioned there a second ago, I have structured in my programming or my workout days throughout the week. So I know I'm training on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. And that's one of the easiest things you can do to keep yourself on track, is actually schedule your workouts like they're an appointment, like they're the dentist, the doctor, picking your kids up from school. I imagine that's in your schedule. Just I would assume
it needs to happen.
It needs to happen. And exactly that. These are things that I think when people go into their week and they're like, oh, I'm going to train at some point. And this is a conversation I have with my clients a lot of the time. Instead of saying, oh, yeah, I plan on training twice this week, the immediate follow up question that I ask them is when, what time, what day. And there's actually been quite a bit of, scientific studies that have been proving the adherence of, well, just the likelihood of adherence whenever you do that process of instead of just saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to train when, what time, where's the backup date. And that's probably one of the best things you can do is look at your week, schedule it in. But then an additional thing I would say go further than that is have a backup plan as well. So it's again something I say to my clients is like, okay, when are you planning on training? Let's say they say Wednesday after work at 5:30. I'm like, okay, what happens if that doesn't work? What are you going to do then? What's the backup plan? Having it
Yeah.
scheduled into your week, the likelihood of you adhering to it skyrockets, and it's something that I highly recommend. Do you do the same thing with your clients? Do you get them to like really quite strictly schedule things, or are you kind of more of a look? These are the sessions, plan them however you want. What's your kind
Um,
of approach to it?
so yeah, like when we're planning out what the training will look like, with that is one of the conversations. And then what I do, the app that I use to program, I put it in on the days that they will most likely be doing those sessions, but
Mhm.
also caveat with saying, okay, this is obviously what's planned. This is when you've sort of said you will go and do these sessions, but if that doesn't end up happening, it doesn't matter if you're not doing them on the exact days. Because I think that's something, again, people like, they feel like they failed if they've scheduled this thing in for this day and then it doesn't happen. When in actual fact, just going and doing it at some point is going to be far better than it being in, like, we try and sort of put it together in the way that kind of makes the most sense. So they'll get the most out of the training. They'll have minimal or as little fatigue from the previous session, so they can go in and work as hard as possible for that session. But obviously sometimes that doesn't end up happening, and sometimes you might end up doing back-to-back days, or like things have to change around, which is far better to just go and do it rather than worrying about it being on the specific day that was planned. But yeah, absolutely, mate. Putting it in the diary and scheduling it, looking at what you've got coming up that week ahead of time, and just having that sort of foresight to pre-plan is such an essential habit. Because a lot of the time you'll kind of do the fight, like the firefighting for the things that you're anticipating coming up and getting in your way, and the barriers that will stop you training anyway. And also, like, obviously different people have sort of, so like, different things on it on certain weeks. So if you look at your diary and you've got a mental week coming up, actually being a bit more realistic and like maybe tweaking what you have planned for that week, rather than like it being, I train Monday, Wednesday, Friday regardless, and then not ending up being able to do that because life is busier for that week. I think is yeah, it's essential for making this sort of a long term thing and a long term habit.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a phrase I used to use was be firm with your goals, but flexible in how you achieve them. So know
Nice.
what you're planning on doing, but be flexible in your approach and how it gets done. Because I think a lot of people, I think we talked about this before, maybe not on the podcast, but just between ourselves, that people go into this process of, for lack of a better term, self-betterment or whatever way you want to phrase it. And they go in with this expectation that they're never going to take time off. They're never going to get sick. They're never going to go on holiday. And it's going to be the exact same week every single week, day in, day out. And when it breaks from that, they freak out. And I think one of the best things you can take, one of the best traits you can really adopt and nurture within yourself is being flexible and not being as rigid when it comes to these things. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of the time people will beat themselves up. Like they said, oh, I'm going to train on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then they don't train on a Monday and they start beating themselves up rather than going, okay, well, I'll just train tomorrow instead. They're like, I failed
Yeah,
myself and I feel bad about that. And the impact that can have on the rest of your week is huge. So I think, yeah, definitely put it in, but have some backup options. And I think you're kind of setting yourself up for success.
absolutely. Habit number two.
Mm-hmm. Habit stacking.
Habit number two is habit stacking. So for anyone who has come across James Clear's Atomic Habit book, you'll obviously know what habit stacking is. Basically, habit stacking means that you are going to, if there's a new habit that you're trying to implement, by attaching it to something that you already do consistently, you're far more likely to adhere to that habit.
Mhm.
So, for example, if you're trying to do more activity throughout the day, if you plan to do a specific thing every time something happens, so it might be if you're sat at your laptop, every time you need to get up to go to the toilet, you're just going to do 10 air squats and 10 press ups, for example, um, is a really good way to uh, start to implement a little bit more movement throughout your day. Or, for example, like when you're brushing your teeth, after you brush your teeth, go do 10 press ups or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Just as a way to kind of frame your habits, because it's going to be much, much easier to stick to new habits if they're just tagged along onto things that you're already doing. Have you got
Yeah.
anything to add there that's not press up or squat related?
Yes. So one of the ones I actually do myself is when I'm taking my nebulizers. So first of all, one of the easiest things you can do when it comes to forming habits is set up the environment to facilitate that habit. So for example, my nebulizers are not something I think about that often. And when I packed away my nebulizer, I completely forgot about it. And what I started doing recently is I have my nebulizer sitting out on the kitchen table. It's there, it's present. And then when I'm taking my nebulizers, I'm reading. So my nebulizers only take 5 minutes, but that's 5 minutes extra of reading that I wouldn't have done. So I'm just using the habit of taking my nebulizer that gives me that time to read. And then vice versa. When I'm reading, I'm also thinking then, oh, I should be taking my nebulizer. So I'm kind of like interlinked those two habits that are both mutually very beneficial to me. The other one I actually gave to my client very recently was when they're making their coffee in the morning. So a lot of people struggle with hydration, which is crazy. If you told me growing up that I would be telling adults to drink more water, I wouldn't have believed you. Like that's like one of the biggest tasks that I have. I'm like, have you drank enough water? It's amazing
Yeah.
how few people actually do drink enough. Speaking of which, but one of the habits I told my client to do was, whilst the coffee is boiling, the water is boiling. I don't drink coffee or tea, by the way. Just so you know, I'm weird, but I don't like hot
We
drinks.
can tell.
Yeah, while you're boiling your coffee, while the water is boiling, drink a cup of water before, like whilst it's boiling. It's literally that simple. So whilst it's boiling, get yourself a glass of water, neck the glass of water, and then by the time it's finished, pour your coffee. Done. That's a
Yeah.
simple way of habit stacking. And again, like get creative with it. I always put the challenge back on to the people I'm working with of I assume that anyone's working with me that is a problem solver. We've talked about this before in the past, but you know, I want to really nurture these traits that I think are key to having a successful process in what we're doing and challenging the people I'm working with by being like, look, get creative. What are the habits you already have? Think about the things you do almost automatically. Is there something you can pull into that habit that you're maybe trying to achieve that will make that habit more easy for you? And I like to kind of put it back on them because, you know, it's just that it gives them that sense of ownership of what they've done and it gives them that sense of pride, which is, I think, super important.
Yeah,
I think that's good
absolutely.
though.
Well,
Habit stacking.
at the end of the day, it's like it has to come from them, because everyone's like, whilst a lot of people are going to do similar things like brush their teeth in the morning, that sort of thing, like everyone's going to do things in a slightly different way. Like say
Like me not
you don't
drinking
have a
coffee.
coffee in the morning, so
Exactly.
you can't stack any habits on that.
Nope.
um yeah, everyone's going to do things in a slightly different way, and actually, like you say, thinking about that for yourself and what makes the most sense for the things that you're trying to achieve, and also the habits that you've currently got.
Mhm.
And also, like you say, it's then if you're coming up with the ideas and the suggestions, you're more likely to buy into it and stick to it rather than someone else, even a coach being like, oh, I think you should do this. I think most people like have a little bit of resistance there, but like, or maybe
Yeah.
not everyone, but like a lot of people do
Authority
have a little bit of
complex.
resistance, being
Yep.
told what to
Yep.
do. So
Yep.
yeah, no, I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Um, Habit number 3. We are going quick fire now. I'm
Hmm.
preventing as much waffle as possible, because we committed to having this as a short episode, and we want to keep it a
Quick
short
fire.
one. Habit number 3: have a plan to follow. So this ties on nicely to obviously scheduling your training in the diary. But if you don't have a plan to follow when you go in there, you're not going to end up getting the most out of that time and getting the results that you want to achieve. If you've like you've got your gym session scheduled in the diary, but you get there and you just like wander around aimlessly and like spend 5 minutes on a cross trainer, and then have a little wander around, do like a set of this, to jump on this machine, that sort of thing. Obviously, you're not going to get the most out of your time. So having a plan to follow, so you know exactly what you're going to do when you go into the gym, it makes it easier to actually go, like, be consistent with going, because it feels a lot more purposeful. You know what you're going to try and achieve when you go there. But it also means that you'll make the most of that time and get better results, as well as that. Do you have like anything else to kind of add to that? You got any nice little analogies that for the
So
people?
I mean, literally what I did the other day was I knew I was going to get back into training this week. So on Sunday night, I mean, I can actually show you it on my phone. I wrote out my exact workouts. So I knew exactly what I was going to be doing. There you go. So you probably can't see it on I'm just showing Tom. Literally full
Nice.
body, broke it down into 4 kind of compound movements, then 4 isolation movements. And I did the 3 full body sessions and just wrote it out, because then I could start to, like, visualization is a big thing for people. You know, I'm sure everybody's heard of, like, you want to pre-visualize what's going on. In fact, my dad told me this the day I scored my first. Here we go. Here's an analogy I didn't even plan. But I used to go to Saturday morning football. It was always a toss up between going to Saturday morning football as a kid or watching Pokemon. Now, admittedly, Pokemon won quite a lot because I was not good at football. I never scored. And I remember saying this to my dad. You know, my friends would all come home and they would have scored 4, 5, 6 goals. I never scored. I was always in defense. Defense. I was so
I was going to
Americanized.
say that's very American.
I know. It's American football.
Defense.
Defense, doing nothing. Yay. And I remember saying to my dad about, you know, I didn't want to go, and he's just like, you just got to visualize what it's like to score. And I was like, I don't know what that's like. And he's just like, just imagine what it's like, the ball going into the net. Like, where are you? What's going to happen? And I'm not even joking you. It might not have been like the next time I played, but I remember trying to visualize what it was like to score, because I would obviously see my friends do it. And I can still remember scoring my first goal, my first and only goal in Saturday morning football. I remember who was in nets. I remember their name. I remember what way they dived. I remember how I kicked the ball. I remember where the ball went. I remember it so clearly. But that is such an important thing when it comes to the success of something. Like, you need to be able to visualize it. And whenever you have a plan, you can go in, you know what machines you're going to be using, you know the order it's going to be in, you know what your capacity is going to be. You can just start to kind of lay that kind of script as such. And then it's just a case of acting out the script. And that's what I do for a lot of the time. I think having a plan to follow is one of, if not the first things you should do when it comes to going to the gym. Having a plan to follow is so important. Like, unless you've been coaching or unless you've been training for a long, long time, and even then, I've been training for 20 plus years, I know how important it is to go in with a plan. Yes, you could make it up on the spot, but in all likelihood, as you said, it's probably not going to be that effective. You're probably going to end up going like, okay, I think I'm done now. And then you end
Yeah.
up leaving like, maybe I left a bit on the table. And in all likelihood, you did, where you know the template, you know the kind of system you're going through, you know how many exercises you're doing. You kind of know, okay, that's it, tied up in a nice little bow, done. I think that's the best thing you could do, is go in with a plan. Don't try and wing it. Like, it's probably not going to work for you.
Yeah.
Point number 4. Now, this goes quite hand in hand with what we've just said. Obviously, a lot of people, when they think about this, it's training is first. They always think training, training, training. But training is why, even if you trained every single day for an hour, that's still less than 4% of your day. What is going to get you the results is the 96%. Let's look at that. So a big part of the day and a big part of this process is going to be nutrition. Planning your meals ahead of time is so key. In fact, I've literally just had this conversation with my client. A lot of people think that style or this approach can be quite restrictive. And I would argue that it's not. I would argue that knowing what you're going to have ahead of time actually is way more freeing than it is restrictive, because you're not spending a lot of your time thinking, what am I going to have to eat? Do I have that in the house? How long is it going to take to prepare? Being one day in advance, or even just a meal in advance, is such a freeing and unrestrictive way of doing things, and it helps you massively. Like, I know pretty much every day what I'm going to have for breakfast, because it's one of maybe 3 things. Lunch, again, one of maybe 3 things. Dinner, Janice makes, so I don't have to think about that. But like, Meal planning is such an important aspect of things, and especially if you're going to be going for something you've never achieved before. So, for example, if you're looking to lose weight and you've been struggling with your weight for a long time, you can't just fall on that. Like, you need to plan for it. You need to have some form of structure and guidance, just like workouts, to get you where you're going to go. And I think that's so important. Is there anything specifically want to add to that in terms of like planning meals ahead of time?
Um, so a couple of things. I think, like you're saying about sort of it, like limiting your options or limiting your freedom for what you're going to eat. Even if you plan all of your meals, you still have the choice to have something else if you really want it. So, and I think most people are often way better planning out probably 80 to 90% of their meals and then having that 10% where, or 10 to 20% where they know they're going to be eating out, or they've got some social stuff coming up, or they want to make a bit more effort with that meal, maybe like it's a date night or whatever. But having the structure for 80 to 90% of what you do, I think is, it just like you said, it makes things so much easier. It means you're not having to think about things like on the fly. It saves
Yep.
so much mental energy, but also time as well. Like if you're having to go to the supermarket every single day to buy what you're going to have for dinner, um, that's so much time spent going to the supermarket, walking around, picking up the stuff. Whereas if you just like have a rough plan of what you're going to do each week, and for the most part, what I do is like breakfast and lunches are like cycling between like sort of 2 to 4 options, depending if I'm at home or if I'm out. And then evening meals, we like I plan it so there's kind of a theme for the night. So for example, like Tuesdays, we quite often have mince of some kind. It might be a bolognese, it might be a cottage pie, it might be just something with mince.
Yep.
Um, Wednesdays is something with chicken. And I've got a couple of different options of what that'll likely be. And you can obviously, like I said, you can always go off that and have something different if at the time you're like, I really don't
Yep.
fancy that thing. But it just it makes such a difference having a rough structure to kind of follow on a weekly basis. And for most people, like during the week, you don't necessarily want to be thinking about it. Maybe have more structure during the week and a little bit less on the weekend.
Hmm.
Um, and just like quite a nice kind of quote that goes along with this is like, plans don't work, but planning does. So like,
Love that.
if you set a plan, you know that there's going to be some deviation from that, or you should expect some deviation from that. But the process of going through the planning is invaluable, and like revisiting that, and obviously then like making tweaks based on things that do change. And that's one thing that like I really focus on, like with the coaching process around nutrition, is even if we set like what the plan is most likely going to be, we know that over the course of the next couple of weeks, and like even the first week, there's going to be stuff that comes up that stops you being able to do that, like implement that plan, whether that's kids being ill or working late or traveling or like whatever it is. So like then thinking about like those things, which more often than not happen quite regularly, like in this situation, what could we maybe do differently to make this easier? And sometimes it's just having, like, say you're traveling, it's like most service stations have an M&S or a Waitrose. Like, okay, cool, I know there's going to be one of these shops there. Having a list of a couple of things that you might grab and go, rather than just be like, service station, McDonald's straight away. Got like, and again, it's like, if you really want to do that, cool, go and do it. You'd like, that's fine. But most of the time, if you've already pre-thought out what you're going to do, it makes it so much easier to actually go and do that thing.
Yeah, I agree. I love that as well. The plans that work, but planning does. That's a very nice one. Okay, I'm going to squeak this in now. First of all, if you're listening to the podcast, please share it. We really appreciate it. Again, if you think this is useful, share it with a friend, share it on social media, tag us. We really appreciate it. But I'm also going to sneak in the would you rather. So,
Oh,
Tom, before we do the last one,
yeah,
would you rather have a lifetime supply of your favorite food or your favorite beverage?
food.
100% food, right? Like unless your favorite beverage, and I always think, I don't know about you, but
Champagne.
my media, yeah, Louis the 13th, just like, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's the only expensive drink I know.
Yeah.
And Fun story about that. The only reason I know that's an expensive drink is because when I was at the Men's Health Cover model competition thing, we had a free bar, and the guy at
Yeah.
the end of the night was like, "Hey, you guys have like a grand left on the tab." And we were like, "What's the most expensive drink you have?" And he pointed at this
Yeah.
one, and it had like a full on like glass jar, and I was like, "How much is that?" And he went, "Too much." And I was like, "Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what would be your lifetime supply of food then?" I know what mine is.
It would probably have to be pizza, if I'm honest. I really,
Solid.
really enjoy a pizza. I have pizza every single week without fail because we do a Friday night family film night and we always have pizza with it. So I have pizza at least once a week, sometimes more, but yeah, at least once. But then
Can
it's
you?
that thing like whatever, like if you have this thing all of the time, like once or twice a week is like I'm happy, like I'm happy with that. But more often than that, I might start to get a little bit bored of it. But I think that would be the same for any food, right?
I would say so. Can you guess what mine is? I'm pretty sure you know what mine's going to be. Walrus teeth.
Oh, sushi.
Sushi. I don't think I could get sick of sushi because I know factually that I can't because literally where it's been, there's a buffet, all you can eat sushi. And I was literally like Janice every single day, like, I know what I want. She was like, we cannot have sushi again. And I'm like, I mean, I didn't, I mean, yeah, that's definitely what I was looking at. Definitely what I was angling at. I could eat sushi every single day, every single meal. No problem. Absolutely no problem.
Yeah.
At 100%, that'd be mine. Okay. So let us know what you would pick as well if you're listening to the episode. Let us know in the comments on this one. Okay, so last one. Set a bedtime. That is probably one of the greatest things you can do. I think, speaking about how we've both been under the weather of late, if you're not taking your recovery as seriously as you're taking your training, you need to. This is so key. And I think that, we're talking about, going back to what I was saying earlier about 1 hour workout being less than 4% of your day. There's one thing that we should do, and we all do in terms of this pie chart that should take up the vast majority of that pie chart: sleep. Sleep is the golden chain that links everything together. And if it's broken, everything else breaks. Like, what's the first thing that you ask someone if they're in a bad mood? Did you not sleep
Why are
well?
you in a bad mood?
Yeah. Why are you in a bad mood? And why is it affecting my day, you
Yeah.
Grinch? Yeah. That's your shit. Deal with it and don't bring it to me. But it's like the first thing you assume, like if someone's in a bad mood, we always go, someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or someone's like, it's the first thing I ask. If someone's performance is dropping, how did you sleep last night? If your mood's bad, how did you sleep last night? It is the fundamental thing. And I actually kind of, again, just from an abstract point of view, it is kind of funny that we literally have to just switch off for a significant period of time just as
Yeah.
a function. Like imagine trying to explain sleep to an alien. It's like, yeah, how do you guys function? Oh, we just like lie down and just switch off. Oh, for how long? Like 20, 30 minutes? Nah, 7, 8, sometimes even 9 hours, unless you're Tom, in which case you maybe get like 2 or 3 hours of solid sleep a night. And every time you say that to me, every time you tell me how often you get up and how often the boys wake you up and how often you just have to wake up at that time, my heart hurts for you because sleep is so key. But setting yourself a bedtime, it sounds funny and it sounds like a childish thing, but it's so important because our body needs that regularity. It needs that routine. We really do crave structure, and you're only going to benefit from having that set time. Now, again, like just like everything, just like nutrition, just like training, be firm with it, be flexible, be flexible. And the thing I always say, if you're going to miss sleep, make sure it's for a good reason. The only thing I can think of that I'm going to miss sleep for is the Super Bowl, and that's once a year. And even then, this year I fell asleep. So, what about you? How important is sleep to you? Speaking
Yeah,
of someone
mate,
who doesn't get as much of it as you would probably like.
yeah, no, it is incredibly, it's incredibly important for, yeah, for everything. And
Everything.
the,
Yeah.
like, the reason it's important to kind of set that bedtime and have that as a regular thing is that there's a lot of the body works on what's called the circadian rhythm, which is a cycle. It's not actually 24 hours. It can vary slightly, so
Sure.
it can sometimes drift, but basically you'll have the same sort of hormonal fluctuations at the same times on a daily basis. So as you're kind of winding down to sleep, a hormone called melatonin will be ramping up, which is a hormone that helps you go to sleep. Um, so if you're constantly changing when your bedtime is, even if you're getting like a solid amount of time, you probably won't actually be getting the same level of quality sleep as if you had a similar time, like similar bedtime, similar wake time on a daily basis. So that's why that is like a really important thing. And obviously, it's like most people have a slightly earlier bedtime during the week and then maybe a slightly later bedtime during the weekend. Like sometimes if that's kind of really extreme, like you have a couple of like really late nights out, even if you're getting good sleep and you haven't drunk loads, that's probably the reason that you feel really tired come
Groggy.
Sunday after you've done that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it is really important, and it just anchors everything else, and it also from this perspective, it makes all the other habits you're trying to do a lot easier if you have like you don't constantly have to kind of keep replanning based on when you're waking up and when your bedtime will be because it's the same or similar on a daily basis.
That's it.
So the more regularity you can have with that, the better you'll be recovering, the better you'll be feeling, the better your energy will be, the better your immune system will be, and probably the easier you will find doing everything else that you're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, sleep is something I've protected since I was young. I always knew that sleep was such a key role. In fact, the first time I got hospitalized, it was because my sleep, whenever I looked back and reflected on, okay, what was it that got me sick? I was sleeping on an airbed in
No way.
Florida. Yeah, and I was like, okay. So that lack of sleep constantly for 3 weeks, I think, that was the kind of the only thing that really changed. Obviously, I was over in America and stuff like that, but I was doing everything else regularly. The one thing that was glaringly obvious upon reflection was I was sleeping on an airbed for 3 weeks that was constantly deflating, and then I had to then, like halfway through the night, get up and sleep on a leather sofa. Not
Nice.
ideal. Not ideal, and it ended me up in hospital. So be as I say something like all the time to my clients, you need to be so protective of your sleep. If you do that, everything is on easy mode, easier mode. It makes things a lot more
Easier mode.
challenging if you're constantly easier mode. Let's not pretend this is easy, but it does make things significantly more manageable when you're getting the correct amount of sleep. Having a bedtime, a regular bedtime, will really help you with that structure. And that is our 5 simple quickfire habits. It's only a half an hour episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, as we said earlier, please review it, like it, comment, let us know what you think. If there's any questions you have, please let us know on the Instagram page. Go over and check us out over there. And hope you have a fantastic day. And we'll see you in the next one. See you soon.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.